All right, Linda, thank you so much for joining me on the Alopecia Angel podcast. I am so excited to have you because you have over 50 years experience in gemstones and jewelry and in so much more. 50 years. And I'd love to know what other skills, traits, and expertise you have in this field, because this way our listeners can know more about you.
Thank you so much for asking. And again, I'm really honored to be in this situation. This is my very first podcast, so I'm super excited that it's with you, and it's a pleasure to have met you. I am a Bachelor of Arts recipient. I have a bachelor's in product and jewelry design from Metropolitan State College in Denver. I have a Master of Fine Arts from CU up in Boulder. I taught photography in the late 80s and early 90s before it was digital, and have taught throughout Boulder Valley schools. I am a graduate gemologist, which is a very rigorous degree and allows me to be an appraiser as well. My skills all over time have come together to really work together as best they could possibly for me at this time.
Wonderful. So today we're going to be talking about the healing properties of stones, gems, crystals, however else that you want to call them. I know, at least for me, they're somewhat interchangeable, but is there really a difference when I say a gem versus a crystal versus a gemstone? Is there like nuances to it?
I believe so. One of the important things to know is that a gemstone comes from a crystal. So the crystal is some of these minerals that you and I have seen in Tucson and around the world. I've been around the world with this stuff. You just can't even imagine them coming out of the earth in the manner in which they do and how they've been unearthed or even transported. When you take that crystal and you do something in the industry, it's called fashioning. Somebody looks at the crystal and decides we're going to just leave it as a mineral because it's worth more as a mineral specimen than it is a fashion gem. Or we're going to take this crystal and we're going to fashion a gemstone out of it. So in my professional opinion, when the human hands touch that crystal and make it into yet another iteration, a faceted gem in this case, I believe that does change the character and possibly the energy of the piece.
I love how you said energy, because for some of our listeners, maybe they think or know that gems, rocks, water, sand, plants, animals, us, humans all have energy. And some people maybe just dismiss it. But from a physical standpoint, physics, right, biology, it all teaches us that everything is energy, whether it's our thoughts, whether it's the crystals or gems, whether it's the earth we walk on, or so many other things, like even the apple off the tree. It all has a certain energy to it. This is wonderful to see how we can help utilize them towards healing. And I'd love to pick your brain and go over your top gemstones, your top crystals for healing. And maybe if you can explain what types of healing, if any, or in particular, what this would give us or provide.
I would love to. And thank you for asking. One of the things that I wrote down as my case for genuine effect or affect onto other energetic forms is that color is measured by something called an angstrom. In gemology, we use this as a methodology for determining what these gemstones are. Each gem, each color vibrates at a different angstrom. I found this to be fascinating because it is proof that at least we know that these are energetic properties that genuinely exist within the crystal form. Cutting it could change the angstroms a little bit based on how it affects the color. But I thought you might like today to hear a little bit about the history of when all this began. And then also I'll go ahead and go over some of the gemstones that I think are the most interesting. People have been using gems and crystals, we know, has been determined for over 3,000 years. The Sumerians did. One of the things that really fascinates me in a marvelously morbid way is that what do people bring to their burial? That is the power of jewelry and gemstones. People are so attached to the energetic properties of that object, however it comes through. I consider it to be jewelry and gems extremely what they call talismanic. I've been in the business as 50 years and nobody ever comes in and cries over their grandma's painting, pretty much. But a piece of her jewelry with the shape of her finger in it, that's it. Everybody's crying. And so I've always been fascinated with that talismanic property. So these are some of the things that are energy carriers that I think can definitively give us some assurance that the feelings that we get are possibly genuine. The other thing is, like a blankie with your child, if a gemstone or a rock makes you feel good, I think you should have it. I think that's enough for me to make me feel like I have the right path. And so with that, I thought you'd be interested in, most people are very attracted to their birthstones. And I find that to be amazing. I thought maybe I laid it out according to Gem Birthstone, if that's of any help.
Oh yeah, we can do both. We can do birthstones and those qualities, but then if there's anything in particular, because I know there's numerous amounts of different types of rocks, gems, and minerals that are probably not a birth because there are only 12 that have healing properties that you know of. There's a couple that come to mind for me right off the bat. And so I'd love to talk about that as well, because I like crystals and I keep a lot of them with me and I love them in my home. I also think that anything we can do to, like you said, that makes us feel good, that makes us feel like we're adding in one more thing or one more step into the process and to making us better, why not? I like to be open to things, and whether it's feng shui, crystals, or acupuncture or anything else, I'm open to trying it all and embracing it all.
Me too. That is so great. And I absolutely agree. People are attracted to things sometimes without even really understanding it. But crystals have been around as talismans and as objects of power, objects of transference. And I think calling in what we need, it's just another tool in the toolbox. We have options and all these beautiful options. And if, like I said, a crystal makes a person feel better, then so be it. I think that's fantastic. Some do produce calm. Rose quartz supposedly heals the heart. Natural clear quartz can be used as a crystal or as a fashion gemstone. Quartz crystal balls are just amazing. They are totally magical in properties. They are also bringing in specific energies like clairvoyance, like the old adage of the crystal ball. Wearing crystal can also bring some kind of possible prescience with it. So I think if we want to call something in, we can research the object, the crystal or the gem that might work best, and then we should have it. I really do believe that. I love crystals. Working for the boss that I do, he's one of the great crystal dealers in the world, and I get a chance to see things that are just amazing. I didn't even really understand the crystals so much until I started being around them. And when I started being around their energy, I started realizing that they really were very powerful objects and extremely rare. It's so hard to find these things that are absolutely intact and extricated from the earth in the manner in which they are. I do know that people throughout history, humans throughout history, have used gemstones also as talismans or as healing property, in some cases for children, for elderly. For instance, February is amethyst, and amethyst supposedly helps with overindulgence or drinking. So no matter what it is, if we feel like it helps that part of us that we need, I'm all for it. January is one of the toughest months. January is garnet. And what a lot of people don't realize is that garnet comes in a variety of colors. Most people think of garnet as red, but garnet comes in the most beautiful green you have ever seen. And it comes in oranges. Garnet is an amazing gemstone. And there's a variety of families. When you go through graduate gemologists, it is the absolute killer of all stones. But what is found in garnet, in the reds in particular, is that they're blood detoxifiers, restorative, And in emotional healing, I think that also has some import. Some of it might be on a physical level, but also on an emotional level, like your support gemstone, which I absolutely carry with me. You can carry something like that with an emotional trigger that makes you feel grounded. And I love that garnet potentially creates stability. So it's a very calming stone. But again, it comes in all those fabulous colors. So if people say to me, I don't really like red, you could have the most vibrant, beautiful green garnet you've ever seen on earth. It comes from Kenya. It's absolutely marvelous.
So going back to amethyst now. So that was garnet for January. Amethyst for February is...
Yes. Amethyst has always been used. And I find this to be interesting too, because it's like a legend or a story throughout history. It's always been used as a protector against overindulgence. And in particular, a god named Bacchus, who was the instigator of drunkenness. And so a person maybe who needs to moderate their alcohol consumption would have a piece of amethyst with them to help whatever it took to bring in all the elements that could potentially protect them from a relapse or something like that. I find that interesting because that's very Roman. So we start to see when these effects of the gemstone are seemingly attached throughout history. It actually is just ending up being a fascinating story of gems and humanity.
So what's for March? Now that we're in March.
I love March because I am born on the moment of spring. It's my favorite thing ever. It explains everything about me. I was born at 4:47 a.m. on March 21st, and I will fully divulge 1956. I love my birthday, and I love my birthstone. And I did want to add that in some cases, people will use the birthstone for strictly the month, or sometimes they'll use it for the astrological signs. So just saying that certainly March 21st is what they say on the cusp. But aquamarine is the birthstone for March, and it is the most beautiful. The name translated means blue-green sea. You can't go wrong with that. Aqua primarily comes from Brazil. There is an incredible aqua mine, a series of them here in the Collegiate Mountains in Colorado, in Mount Princeton. And I actually have old miner type friends that go up there and bring this beautiful aquamarine. It's a form of beryl, and it's absolutely gorgeous. And that's the other thing, is that these gems form only where the geological formation embraces it. These things can be very difficult to get. And there's a very limited supply of aquamarine in Colorado, but there is a source, and it's absolutely beautiful material. Aquamarine is a talisman for facilitating clear breathing. And so I was thinking, so then I ad lib because I have taught yoga and one thing or another. And I would say you could hold this during a piece of aqua during a meditation when you're really trying to focus on your deep breathing. And you have this aquamarine on your person, or you're wearing aquamarine. I tried to find something different in each one of the gemstones for the birthstones so that we'd be able to use what we needed for whatever the particular occasion called for. Clear breathing.
Clear breathing is for aquamarine primarily. So anyone with asthma, maybe allergies, or with any congestion, colds, or potentially maybe a bronchitis, pneumonia, maybe even smokers or lung issues, emphysema type thing. Good to know. So is April the diamond?
April is the diamond. When I ask people, I say, what's your birthstone? They say April. I'm like, I'm sorry. I didn't do it. Diamond, I found in Hindu mythology, is it would drive away depression. So sparkle is a very weird thing. Now, I've heard this, and I've heard this to be true, and I've heard this to be dispelled. So this is what I've learned about sparkle. But the way that we feel that little rush when you see something sparkly, oh, what's that, like a magpie or something, was actually a cortex response to seeing the sun or light on water. It meant water. as a mother creature walking across the terrain with your children, this was a survival. So it was like water. And so sparkle has this strange effect in the brain. And I think most of the people that I know would say the same thing. And it just makes you happy. So for me, when I started reading that it was an antidepressant, I was like, yeah, you see something sparkly and you just have to smile. It's just, oh, that's lovely.
I agree. Diamonds definitely have a specific sparkle to it. And even when I'm with friends or even just out and about, and when you see somebody's ring just sparkle in such a very unique way and how it just grabs onto the light or the lighting that's in the room, it does make you turn. It does catch your attention.
I love that. I just attended a seminar. You're so on the beam. We are talking literally about things I've just been learning about. I can't believe you would say that. In the Victorian times, they would rose cut the diamonds, not for sparkle during daylight, but to glow in light. And they were all cut specifically to show up in candlelight. How cool is that? Isn't that just beautiful? And so the diamonds are actually cut to create specific effects. And the development of the diamond being cut over history is a lengthy one. A lot of people have worked on trying to make them more sparkly, more yellow, more colored. But also I read that it offered anti-aging energy. And I was taken back to that diamond marketing campaign when I was growing up. A diamond is forever. And I thought, well, that's how you could apply, because diamond does have this affinity to remind you of longevity. And you see all these memes, like it took a long time to make this diamond kind of thing, a lump of carbon into diamond. And it's a reminder. It's a bit of an inspiration that no matter how long it takes, you can still get there. You can still be that shining diamond.
That's great. So in terms of the diamond, what properties besides longevity, anti-aging, does it help us to capture or to improve on?
Because it's generally a clear stone and it's based on its clarity, I also read that it promoted clear thinking, that most of the really clear gemstones had those properties of also enhancing clear thinking with the owner or the wearer. So diamond also had that.
So I guess my next question would be, for me personally, I already know the answer, but let's see from your expertise. If the diamond or the stone is not a real diamond, meaning it's not from the earth and it's lab grown or made in China, essentially, is this something that would still pertain or have the energy that we're looking for or not? Are we only searching and talking about real stones from real earth, not lab made, not grown in a container type thing?
This is a really good discussion at this particular time because it is a very hot topic and I am a custom designer. So it's my job to hear what the customer wants and get them that which is in their price range. Having lab-grown diamonds on the market has rocked the natural diamond world a little bit. Honestly, it's solidified it as well. The lab-grown diamonds give people the opportunity of having a monstrously beautiful diamond on their hand and being able to afford it. Things that people couldn't afford. I really am here to hear what the client wants and what they expect and what I can get for them for the absolute best price. Being a gemologist, I spend a lot of time under a microscope. They've done a good job creating a natural entity. This has always been the case throughout my particular art history in my life as a photographer. Was digital acceptable? Is it got to be old time film? And there's a huge hoopla over that as well. My response was I use digital photography for when that is appropriate. And I use film photography when that is appropriate. Each has its own realm. So I give space for the lab-grown diamond, and then you can always upgrade.
In terms of the energy, though, behind it, would you say that it's a little more lackluster if it's lab-grown crystal or diamond versus the natural energetic composition from the earth?
I see it in two different dimensions. And when I put a perfect lab-grown diamond ring on a woman or man's hand, and everything is absolutely breathtaking, that's my job. That's what I do. I'm okay with it. It does have energy. Maybe that's where the energy comes in. Because just like the shank of grandma's ring, it might not have that great a value to a lot of people, but it has value to that person. And they bring that inherent value to that object.
My stance is if it's not real, then the energy isn't there. To me, I see things as they are, very discerning. So it's very different to say you have an organic apple from an organic tree versus a GMO apple or something that has pesticides. Like to me, and I see a big difference and it's black and white.
I could be convinced, but except that as a custom designer, I'm very much obligated to what that person wants. But not always is it about energy for them. It's about design or look.
True. But right now, since we're talking about healing properties, I want to be linear and really focused on the healing properties. So in the same token, when you start thinking of water too has energetic properties, and you can have spring natural water from the mountains, and that has a bunch of minerals and a bunch of natural things like potassium and hydrogen and whatnot, all encapsulated in this mountain spring water. But then you also have the recycled stuff from the sewage from your city water that's dead water. It's got no life to it, but it's still water. And so I separate things in my head mentally. And so I guess my stance is from a consumer aspect, I always try to go to the more natural, right? I prefer the organic versus the non-organic in every aspect, including my crystals.
Taking away artisanal mining is devastating to communities. This is in many ways the only income they have. I could have issue with that, and that it may not be as ecologically aligned as we might hope.
Or even eco-friendly.
There's definite problems on both sides. The diamond industry has a very difficult history.
Yeah, I remember seeing maybe a decade ago, Blood Diamond with Leonardo DiCaprio, is it? That was a fascinating insight. And I'm sure some aspects are true. Some aspects are a little aggrandized ever so slightly for the drama of the movie. But it definitely gave you a great insight into what this industry looks like, where it started, the roots, how it affects people at every level, who benefits, who doesn't benefit. Even having lived an hour and a half, 2 hours from Antwerp, which I don't know if anyone knows except maybe you on this call, but to my listeners who don't know, Antwerp is like the headquarters of the diamond world and the diamond industry. And this is Antwerp, Belgium. And having lived in the Netherlands, I was only an hour and a half, 2 hours by train to Antwerp. And Antwerp's a lovely city. I absolutely love it. It's probably my favorite city in all of Belgium. Okay, so going back, we're diverging, which I tend to do. May.
Well, May is so yum. May is emerald, and I really do love emeralds. Emeralds are a form of beryl, so they're just exactly the same identical composition as the aquamarine, except it has a different chemical that makes it green over blue. And they're much harder to find. Primarily, they used to be found in Cartagena in Colombia. Truthfully, right now, the premier material, and it is the most vibrant, beautiful, exquisite material, is from Russia, and it is untreated. That is unheard of for emerald. So I also went along with color, like color light therapy, and the color green has always been associated with good luck, and that if you wore an emerald, it could possibly relieve stress. And this one is that it had the ability to increase your intuition. And there's always a mystery about an emerald. There's always a story about an emerald. Somebody so-and-so had an emerald and it got lost and it was in a crown and then they found it in a museum 200 years later. There's always some kind of crazy story, mysterious story about emeralds. And they're beautiful, but they are fussy. Breaking one is every jeweler's nightmare. and they have a propensity for being fractured or fracture filled, 99% of them, and having them break can happen on the bench or otherwise. That's why huge, beautiful, clear, large sized emeralds are so phenomenally expensive. They're extremely hard to find and they're extremely beautiful. I love them.
Any other properties that you can share with us for the emerald?
Just that it had an air of mystique. I found that to be just an interesting attribute, not something that I would think, but it had a mysterious sort of quality about it. As if you were to wear an emerald and there was a mystery about you, or there's always a mystery about where that emerald came from or what family it was from. So it has what I consider to be very creative properties. Greens, yellow greens, blue greens are generally thought of as being extremely creative colors and energetic properties.
All right. So what about June?
June has got a couple of things going on, and I think of the Gemini and the June. June is actually, it can be alexandrite or natural pearl. We'll talk for fun purposes. Alexandrite's the really fun stone. Right now, alexandrite is off the chart. Once again, Russian alexandrite is simply one of the most prized gemstones on earth. But alexandrite is something called pleochroic. It has two colors at once. It's one of the strongest or possibly the strongest two-colored stone out there. This takes a lot of work. You have to find the stone. It has to be cut a specific way.
What color is alexandrite?
It goes from this incredible dusty green to a magenta purple. It's completely 180 degrees across the spectrum from one another. And as you rock it in different light sources, for instance, if you have daylight source or incandescent or tungsten, it'll take your breath away. You just can't even believe anything. A really good alexandrite is extremely hard to find. And the material that comes from Russia is simply off the charts. But I found it an interesting relative to June, since June hosts the Gemini sign, because it's two. And it's two things completely different and yet together in one piece.
And what does the pearl do in terms of like healing properties and helping us be better?
Pearl is unbelievable, actually. I ran a Tahitian pearl company in the early 2000s. And what I found out about pearls is that it is also actually an analgesic because it's a calciferous material formed inside a shell. And so what they will do is any of the pearls that are not market worthy, look beautiful, that are around the neck or something that you want to string up, they crush. And it is actually put like baking soda. I don't know if you ever did that when your tummy hurt and you would take a little bit of baking soda and water and it would instantly neutralize the acid in your stomach. And pearl actually does that.
So now we're into July.
I love July too. Ruby has such a history. Ruby is a political gemstone of the most gorgeous nature. There's a reason why it is so prized. Ruby might be the number one gemstone in the world, just bar none.
So what are the healing properties?
For many years, and when I talk about many years, I'm talking about like Victorian, 150, 200 years. We know that because I work with estates and antiques, I see this all the time. Sometimes the design would mimic or support the healing property of the stone. There was a lot of mourning jewelry for people who had passed. Ruby, because of its brilliant, beautiful red, and it's called very slightly purplish red in the gemology world. It increases positivity. And it's also a gemstone that helps to regulate the menstrual cycle, which I thought was interesting. But once again, the systematic function of the blood. And so it seems simplified enough that a red gemstone would be a blood antitoxin or something like that. But that does seem to be a current theme. One of the most prized gemstones in the world. And there's a very limited amount of ruby remaining in the world. There's just not enough geological formation to actually host this phenomenon that occurs. It's volcanic. And generally, ruby is hosted by marble. It was also recognized as a status symbol. So if you wore ruby, it meant you were elevated somehow.
Okay, so do you think that ruby would also be helpful for women in menopause?
I think so. I do, because anything that helps to regulate, there's still rhythms that are very much parallel to menstrual cycles. And fun fact about me, I developed a timepiece for women to track their periods, and that's another conversation. But I happen to know a lot about this subject, and I was amazed at its regularity under purported circumstances of having obstacles or difficulties. I think that what I learned was that it was a lifelong process from premenstrual, menstrual, and menopausal, post-perimenopause, and menopause. It's the same, but now it is manifested differently throughout our lives, or my life.
Okay. So now we have August. What's August?
August is peridot. You're either a peridot person or you're not. A lot of people, for some reason, do not like peridot. And I think it's because it's a lime green. Limey green seems to have a little bit of a cast around it. But my daughter in particular, she's born in August. But it says, and this might go along with the theory of Leo ruling the heart, is that it opens the heart chakra. And so I thought to myself, maybe that's why no one likes it.
And so the healing properties to peridot are?
They say if you would like more positive relationships, wear peridot. So it helps. And this is good for me to hear too right now. I'm the mother of 4 and I'm helping raise some grandchildren, but it opens up your relationships with people and creates more positivity. And I think we all need that. I think that's a wonderful thing. The other thing is peridot comes from something called the pegmatite dike, and it rolls down the hill. It's alluvial, and it becomes this beautiful rock. It's really tactile. It's like a worry stone or something.
So that's August. And now we are in September.
How I love the sapphire. Not everyone knows that sapphire comes in a spectrum of colors, from the beautiful blues that we expect all the way to pinks, yellows, mint greens, dark greens. The colored sapphires are just now coming into their own. And I think possibly of all the gemstones, I may love the sapphire the most, but I keep wavering between favorites. And they do come with either natural or unheat treated. Now, sapphires are used in Ayurvedic therapies. And I don't know a lot about Ayurveda necessarily, but I know that in the alternative healing world, sapphire has what they call a double terminated crystal. And people love that for energetic therapy, for healing. And so a natural stone is generally preferable versus a heated stone. They're both completely acceptable. But if you're going to use a sapphire for an Ayurvedic healing therapy, it is best to use one that is unheated. And it says to help with migraines. So I haven't really quite made direct connection between a sapphire and migraines. Like a lot of them make perfect sense. The red controlling the blood or helping with the blood and digestion and things like that. But the blue, I haven't made a definitive connection between the sapphire and getting rid of migraines. But they also talk about it helps to facilitate the function of the thyroid and cell regeneration. It is a very distinctive crystal shape.
So that is September. So now we're in October. What do you have for October?
October is a wonderful gemstone. It's a little bit soft, but it's interestingly made. Opal is a fiery gemstone made from silica under high heat. So it fills in organic materials where you might find petrified wood or bone. It's actually fascinating. The look of the opal is if you were looking into a million soap bubbles in the sun in your sink, because the silicate forms in the sphere like that. It's primarily found in Australia. Opal can be found in other places, but mostly there's some Peruvian blue There's some pink in Peru. That's almost all mined out. But the multicolor opal that we're used to seeing, either the Boulder opal or the Australian type opal, where it's just filled with color, is made in this way by filling a very soft material and hardening over time. Opal can be very expensive, but it is very soft. Because of what they call the play of colors, I thought this was really fun. It said opal can possibly help overcome an artist's or writer's block. And I think that play can actually be a factor or a component of healing and therapy, but also just understanding that everything is comprised of so many atoms, so many molecules, so many electrons that I think I have to recognize that for myself. That's where the actual connection for me is on a very fundamental scientific level. And this is a great example of that. Opal is very special gem. November is topaz or citrine. Topaz is also an unsung heroine. Topaz can be a variety of colors, golden browns, but also you can find topaz in clear and what they call a Swiss blue, heat treated, and London blue. The original concept of topaz was like a champagne color, but topaz can actually be a beautiful reddish orange. Many of these gems come in a variety of colors and not what maybe I would expect when going to research them. And it says that topaz offers self-confidence. Maybe you want to really apologize to somebody and you give them a topaz or a citrine. Right there. Isn't that just beautiful? It's just absolutely, it comes full circle round. It becomes a very whole experience. I love that idea.
I don't know too many women who would say no to jewelry.
Absolutely none that I know. Every once in a while I meet somebody, but that isn't very often, myself included.
And citrine, why is it that November has both citrine and topaz?
That's a good question. My theory on it is a lot of people in the 70s, for instance, didn't like anything gold colored, like the association with harvest gold from the 60s. Seriously. Trend colors actually dictate how gemstones appear on the market. And so topaz, being a champagne golden color, was very out at the time. And topaz could be irradiated to a beautiful bright blue and very reasonably priced. So I think that it could have been financially driven as well as color driven trends, because there's not really a lot of difference between a beautiful citrine and a beautiful topaz. They are different they are different compositions completely. But in terms of color and what can be done with them, and particularly with clarity, they are quite similar.
What are some of the healing properties to citrine?
Citrine and topaz, when I researched them both, had similar properties. I don't know if it was considered color or whether it is actually the material that is made of it. There is similarity. But again, I found that citrine was also referenced forgiveness. What a lovely thing.
So what do you say for December?
Zircon or turquoise? Zircon is another unsung heroine. That's unfortunate because zircon is really beautiful. It can come in a beautiful red. Zircons are phenomenal. A lot of people do not understand what zircon is, and zircon can be used merely like a diamond. It comes in a jillion colors. It sparkles like madness. Strangely enough, it just doesn't ever get the footing in the market that I think it truly deserves. Zircons are going to get more and more rare as time goes on. They're getting consumed on the market. Someday a really nice purple zircon will be hard to get.
What healing properties does turquoise have?
Wow. What healing properties doesn't turquoise have? First of all, I think I mentioned earlier that one of the things that fascinated me is what was put into a burial. The Egyptians in particular had a fascination with turquoise and lapis. Turquoise was a stone that carried you through the underworld and was always in everything the Egyptians did. It's also a stone that's soft enough that can inlay, so it can really enhance a design like pharaoh's crowns and things like that. And so the first thing about turquoise is it's a guide. It will guide you. And so you'll see it a lot in tombs. And zircon is very misunderstood and has a lot of work to do. So I said the gem, the zircon, has a lot of work to do, as it's said to induce sleep and heal madness. Now, that's a big ticket item, which I assume is no small feat. And the other thing is people say zircon can be radioactive. I haven't really researched that. I don't think there's enough there to actually be harmful, but anything radioactive could be problematic. So turquoise is a transformative stone. Zircon is one that calms you down. Those two were completely different.
Fantastic. Are there any other stones that you wanted to touch upon that have other healing properties that are outside of the 12-month calendar year?
There's always the alternative birthstone, but I didn't think we'd want to get into that today. But I know that when you go to a crystal store, people are always looking for something for the property, the healing property. For instance, rose quartz heals the heart. So people that have pain in their heart, who doesn't, can benefit from rose quartz. Actual crystal quartz is extremely helpful with magical ceremonies, power, being able to be clairvoyant, to see things intuitively. If you need something, there are crystals out there that can help you with them.
Very true. I appreciate your knowledge and your expertise. Thank you so much for coming to the show and showcasing your wisdom. Is there anything else that you'd like to let our listeners know about you, how they can find you, maybe some last tips or tricks, and any other thoughts that you'd like to share?
Thank you so much. I have a beautiful studio in Boulder, Colorado. My handle for Instagram is @ChristineMarguerite, and my website is ChristineMarguerite.com. I'm also an author of a book, Women of Jewelry. I think that as an end user, when I custom design for somebody, I'm trying to bring all this in, trying to get a sense of who that person is and really apply the gemstone and the design to their needs, custom to their needs on levels that might not be immediately perceived, but can be inherently perceived.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Thanks.
Thank you for listening to the Alopecia Angel podcast, a positive light in healing alopecia. You can do this and we can help. Spread the word that reversing alopecia is possible by telling your friends and family.